evening, everyone. I'm your host, comedian, magician, Danny Whitson. But it's all tricks aside, because tonight, we're turning the paranormal into the normal. Join me as we explore the gray areas of reality. We're going to talk all things paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, and aliens, and see how it's all connected. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association, and we are live. So if you're an experiencer yourself, or you're just plain nosy, be sure to send me your question and subscribe to the podcast. Now, get ready, because it's going to get deep. No, really, we're going to go way out there, because this is Beyond the TinFoil Hat. What's happening, my paranormal junkies? Welcome to Beyond the TinFoil Hat, and I'm your host, comedian, magician, Danny Whitson. Guys, we got a good show for tonight. Excuse me. First of all, I want to say, all you people who've been showing up with all the great questions, we've got some good ones for you tonight, too. So you get those questions already, because we got a fantastic guest. I want to give a quick plug real quick for the Patreon account at experiencersupport.org. Show us some support. Show us some love. Everything goes towards the podcast and helping Ryan Stacy out with investigations. So be sure to check us out at experiencersupport.org, Patreon. Also, we got some really cool articles for you to check out at the website as well by Ryan Stacy himself. So be sure to get over and check that out. Now, tonight's guest, very interesting. And we're talking UFOs again. Yes, she's a UFO experiencer. She's a contactee, an author, and a finalist from a Norwegian reality TV show. So, yeah, kind of cool. I tell you what, guys, let's welcome Dana Louise.
Hi. Woo.
Jazz hands.
Yeah,
yes.
Jazz hands.
Here we go.
Yay.
Awesome, Dana. Well, Dana, hey, glad you to be here. I tell you what, if you don't mind, though, do you care to let the viewers know a little more about you?
Okay, well, I live in Minnesota. I'm a wife of 32 years and a mother of 2 grown sons. And right now, I finished. It took me 4 years to write a book that I thought was going to take me 9 months, because if you lived it and experienced it, you should be able to write about it, right? Well, that's not what happened. But I had to write this book because I was watching Harry Potter one day, like Sunday afternoon, drinking a bottle of wine, folding the laundry, looking at Harry Potter going, shit, he ain't got nothing. My life is weirder than that. And then a little voice said, well, then maybe you should write a book about it. So that's what I did. And that's why I'm here. And I think I found you guys because you have experiencer, i.e. somewhere in your, promotional tag. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm an experiencer. And I'm just starting to come out of what I call the cosmic closet that I've been hiding in.
Closet.
I call it the cosmic, coming out of the cosmic closet. That's my little hashtag, whatever moniker. I don't know what you want to call it. Because no, I literally been hiding in a cosmic closet, not saying a word to anybody. Right.
Absolutely. I love that term, cosmic closet, because I've kind of, I don't want to say I'm new to this world, but I've always been, I've went from full blown skeptic, atheist, not to believe in nothing, to now my mind is open and, I accept things. And experiencer, which is a term that's used a lot in our community and our world, it's probably the best one, because that's what we are. And a lot of times something happens and we're like, holy crap, I can't explain that.
Right.
I'm a different person now. So right. I tell you, well, let's do this, Dana, because you've got a lot of cool things, in this world, but where did it start? What made Dana say, holy crap, there's more to this world than what I thought there was?
Well, for most people, if many people don't even remember being in the crib. I do remember being in the crib. And I think the reason is because if you have a shock to your system, like something, like you think you're going to die or something, I think that wakes up your synapses as a child. So people who've had a bucolic upbringing, they might not remember everything. Maybe their memories start up about the age of 3 or something. Mine, I'm in my crib. And the reason being is it's not my mother or anything like that. It was gray aliens. I feel like George Tsoukalos, it was aliens. And so I don't know how to say to you that I had the wherewithal or the, thinkology as an infant to be like, well, this isn't normal, And I think the reason is because, okay, so my first experience, let me explain it to you. I'm in my crib, so I'm basically offline, right? I'm sleeping, I'm offline. And back in my day, because I'm old, we used to have these shades that were just basically paper. And they were on a metal or on a rod that had like a magnetic clutch or something. So you would pull on it and the shade would go down and you could kind of like adjust it. I don't know how to describe it to you. Yeah. So I'm laying in bed and the shade goes up and it's in the middle of the night. And, it's a very loud cacophony and it should wake up everybody and somebody's going to be in trouble, right? Something's going on. But I remember just looking at the window like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm probably, 6 months old, 9 months old or something like that. I'm thinking somebody's going to be in trouble. And I know you're thinking that's a lot of thoughts for a baby, but stick with me. Anyway, so I'm thinking this and I look at the window and there's this balloon, this gray balloon face. And immediately my first thoughts are like, and I didn't put this in the book. It's kind of like things keep coming out now that the book is, like my memories are engaged a little bit more. I was seriously thinking, was it a balloon? But then just looking at the eyes and the eyes are looking back at me. And I'm like, oh shit, it's not a balloon. And I'm just going to tell everybody from my experience and what I saw, you can see a lot of these different ETs or grays or whatever. This being was a gray, but very simple, very simple. So when I see all this other stuff, maybe they're a being that's related or something like that. But the beings that I saw were just very kind of plain, but a gray nonetheless. So the noise happens, the shade goes up, I see this face in the window. I'm expecting my parents to come dashing in, nobody does. And then the next thing I know, there was a light going on in the room too. So there's this, and then there was a searchlight going around. And, when I was, older or whatever, cars could go by, but a car light, it's just like, it's steady, it has a flow. But this was inquisitive going around. And the light was a very strange color. I've never seen a color light as bright white as this light. Easy for me to say, whatever. It was just the strangest bright white light. And it was looking around the room. And then the next thing I know, because here it is, faces coming over the crib. And then I black out. And this scenario played out, I can't even tell you, years, a decade.
So when you're saying that this was something, this is a recurring thing.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Okay, now, quick question, real quick, something. So you think, so you're saying when this first happened, you were maybe a year old, 2 year old, 3?
I was not quite a year because when this first started, I remember being in, I had a diaper on. And I couldn't stand up.
So Dana, how old were you? Was this memory seem like it's something that's just always it existed?
Yes.
Or was there so there wasn't like you were 6 years old and you this memory popped up and you remembered this? So this is something that's just always been with you. Yes,
and it kept being reaffirmed because they would come back and I would go, oh shit, it's them again. And let me just kind of for people, because normally like in my book I kind of like stretch it out, but let's just fast forward to just very recently, I was on Facebook, and a picture popped up of a girl that used to live right behind me. And we hadn't seen each other. Well, we were friends up until about 6th grade, and I hadn't really talked to her since then, whatever. And so I reached out to her and I'm like, oh, let's get together. So we make a long story short, got together. We're sitting there, and she's just a very normal, sweet person, just very normal. And all of a sudden I started telling her about the aliens, and the voice in my head is like, stop, she's not going to believe you. See, this is the part of coming out of the cosmic closet. Because once you start telling people this, they might think you're normal, and then that all goes away because you brought up aliens. So, kiss that goodbye. And I started saying that, I'm like, oh shit, I just saw her for 5 minutes and now she's going to think I'm crazy. I'm never going to see her again. But I got the complete opposite reaction. I'm sitting there talking. I'm kind of freaking out in my mind. And she puts her hand on mine, like, stop, and I'm like, what? I'm kind of shocked. And she goes, Dana, I remember the vibrations and the humming too. And I was like,
wow.
Yeah, she said she remembers it happening a number of times. And she said that to quote her, because I ended up quoting her in my book, she said she was petrified when it happened. We don't think they ever visited her, but she's a witness. And growing up and most of my life, I've always had witnesses to many of the things that have happened to me. And for a while I was like, God, why all these witnesses? And then I kind of figured out that I wouldn't believe any of this had I not experienced it. And B, I wouldn't remember. And C, it's just helpful to have somebody reaffirm, all those things that yes, it happened. And so I'm very grateful of the witnesses. And I just could not believe, 50 years later, this woman sat there and she's normal as pie saying, I remember that this happened, Dana.
One thing also because some people may find it harder to believe that you could be a 6-month-old baby and still have a memory. Mm-hmm. And I do want to clarify this. I myself have a memory. I have no clue how old I was. All I know is that I couldn't roll over. Mm-hmm. And yeah. I remember turning my head. It's nothing paranormal, but right. I just remember having this memory. I remember I was so young that I don't think I was crawling.
Right.
I literally looked over and my mother was laying on this side of the bed, just grinning from ear to ear. And I looked over to this side, my dad's grinning ear to ear. So I was laying in the middle of and that memory's clear. It's always been there. So I understand what you're saying with your situation, Wow. So it's absolutely very possible. No telling whenever our brains start collecting memories.
Right. Well, I knew that by the time we took apart the crib, the top rail of my crib, not the side rails, but, the headboard and footboard, mine was chewed up. Because I was afraid to death of, going to sleep at night. And I remember when my mom would put me down for a nap or I'd wake up, I would stand there and I would chew on that crib. I was too good of a girl. I could have probably gotten out of the crib, but I obeyed. And I sat there and chewed on that crib. And I remember even bouncing and hitting a tooth that was coming in and everything. And the thing is, when I got a little bit older, because my mom wasn't doing it when I was baby, but when I wasn't, smart enough in her world or whatever, she started to do that horrible prayer at night. Now I lay me down to sleep. And let me tell you, for me, nothing could have been worse because, I pray the Lord my soul to keep.
I love that song, Metallica, Understand That.
If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. That was almost like a threat to me every night instead of a comforting prayer, because it was like, oh shit, because I never knew when they were going to come. When I did get older and I could walk around, I remember taking them on a tour of the house. I just remember this kind of being in the kitchen for a brief moment and showing them my dogs, because my dogs were hooked up.
What's so crazy also, Dana, this is okay. And I don't want to, what you were seeing these things. Yes. See, this is the other thing that just blows my mind. You and a child, let's say, I don't know, we're just going to say this was the 70s, early 70s, maybe.
60s.
Okay, I know. Well, okay. All right. Gray aliens, the image, the thing that we think of gray aliens now, the stereotypical alien,
right,
didn't really exist when in that time. And this is what you were seeing.
Yep.
So
and that's how I know it was true.
That remarkable.
And I wrote about that in my book because it wasn't until I was a little bit older, maybe first grade, I'm thinking. I'm not quite sure what the year was. Then we had Quisp, Quisp, Quisp cereal. We had the Flintstones got that zippity-doo guy flying around and stuff like that. I mean, so there were just a couple of those things which were kind of okay for me, calming or whatever, but they were cartoons and they were, not real. But somehow or not, I just knew what I was experiencing wasn't normal and not to talk about it. And I'm sorry, but because people have suffered from, abuse and those kinds of things. Absolutely. And it's just weird that when you're a victim and something's wrong and you just, at least for me, I just was quiet, shut down, even though everybody thought, oh, she's just a happy-go-lucky singing, I'm out there kind of like, la, la, la. But the real part of me, I think that's kind of a defense because the real part of me, was dealing with some serious issues, And
I want to say this too, because, some people are divided in the paranormal, supernatural community about, who's telling the truth, who's not telling this. But one thing I will say is that, like here in the United States, our congressmen and women are standing up and acknowledging the possibility of interdimensional beings, that this could be a reality.
Right.
Which makes it a little more safer for you to come forward with your stories and people not think you're crazy. Right. One thing I also want to add this to, and something that I did not think about the other day. First of all, we throw the word crazy around, and stuff, but mental illness is absolutely a real thing that everyone does suffer with.
Right.
And guess what? Even people who believe in aliens and UFOs also have mental illness. We all do. Right. There's something going on.
Right.
So yeah, you can meet somebody who is mentally ill, but they may have had an experience.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're not mutual. They're not mutual. Not
exactly. So, and I mean, but the thing that I have picked up is there's so many stories like yours, so many people that have seen the same thing. It's to just to think for a second that there's nothing going on. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
And just like you being so young at the time, the stereotypical alien was the little green guy, or something crazy from maybe Star Trek or something like that, but not.
Well, that wasn't even around then. I mean, basically, yeah. But they're aliens. They had those gray guys with the horns on the top. They didn't look like grays. Those dudes. I can't remember. I wrote about them in my book. They had the two little things.
Oh yeah, anyway, well, everything had antennas.
Yeah, they didn't look like a gray alien. There was no gray aliens on Star Trek. I'm going to tell you.
So to me, that just, like I said, that's amazing to me that's what you were seeing, and this went on so long. Now, so when did you ever go to your parents and say, "Mom, Dad, I've been dealing with this"? So it's something that you never went to them about.
I didn't until they were, I hate to end of life, until they were end of life. And I said, did you ever experience anything? And they said, no. And some people think maybe it runs in families. Does it skip a generation? I don't know. I have a lot of suspicions because my dad, I just got a file that I think was by a CIA guy. I know that sounds really weird, but it had classified papers about my dad. That was given to me by a person.
Well, here, hold on one second, because we do got a quick question, and you've pretty much have, we kind of jumped the gun. One of our favorite viewers here at the Beyond the TinFoil Hat, Live Light. She always has the great questions. She has great questions every week here. She said, "Hi, Dana. Did you discuss these alien events with your parents? And if so, how did they react?" And I think that's kind of where we're on now. Live Light
Yeah.
apparently is a mind reader too, so she popped the question.
Well, it's that telepathy thing though, because aliens use shape-shifting and telepathy, and I wish seriously that we had way more time, because I'd really like to get into the whole holograms and shape-shifting and the telepathy, you know, and all that kind of stuff. You know, there's just so much to talk about.
You know, I've got so many questions on the telepathy thing, because sometimes I think there's some things like I always confuse me a little bit, because I'm like, okay, what is going on? Like if they're able to, because I kind of believe like they can contact through almost like a conscious level that
Yes.
we don't understand.
Right.
And then you've got the thing where there's been so many people that have been abducted that they wind up finding some type of strange metal in their bodies somehow. But then it makes me wonder, well, then why would if they can track us consciously, why would they need to stick a foreign object in our body?
Well, because I had a microchip come out of the back of my neck too. And you might think that's weird, but it was witnessed by my neighbor. She's like, what the hell is this? And then we sat there, really pushing it. I mean, it was metal. It was there. She had it on her finger. I had it on mine. And we sat there like this, and then it disappeared. I mean, so here was like a screen that, it was a chip, and it was hard enough so our fingers couldn't destroy it. But then examining it about a minute in, it evaporated, which cracks me up, and just kind of non sequitur. But I was just watching this TV show, Resident Alien, and you got to watch it.
I've heard people talk about that, by the way. I haven't watched it, but I hear it's funny.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, so the lady on the show yesterday was like, oh, she's got this chip in the back of her neck. And, part of it is triggering for me, but also it's confirming for me. And of course, the writers are getting this from other people who are contactees. But,
like I said, I'm a writer, of course, that's where you go get your source, let's get your material. So they've heard these things, and apparently something with the back of the neck. Right. Now, like I said, that interests me, but what interests me more is like the telepathy, the consciousness, how people all have very similar experiences, that there has to be more than, like with the abductee situations, a lot of people go to sleep paralysis, which sleep paralysis is a very real thing. Right. And this is the other thing about it, is that person very well can be experienced sleep paralysis. But what's interesting to me is physically your body's paralyzed, but up here consciously you're awake, but they're experiencing the same thing that these other people are. Right. You're having these alien encounters. Why? Right. If it's so there's something going on there.
We'll get into that in another minute, because there was 2 other kinds of aliens that came and took my DNA. We'll get into that. I don't know when you want to talk about that one.
Well, hey, anytime. Well, I mean, you had the experience as a child with the Greys, and this is something that's just continued to go on your entire life.
Well, so I think the Greys are really, and so to be going back to your point earlier, like, why would they do this to humans? I really write that, just think about it. You have to put everything in perspective. What do we do to cows? What do we do to lab rats? What do we do to animals that we don't really regard much, or, that we're, examining in one way or the other? And how do those animals react to us? So I just call myself a cow in my book, because I'm like, oh my God, the farmer's coming, should I really be afraid or not? That's just my reaction to the unknown. Should I really be afraid? Well, I think I really should, but it's just kind of like, that's what we do to other species as well. So we can't exactly look at it and then go, why would they do that? We're doing it,
And, I think a lot of times us humans, we have a hard time of stepping outside and taking a look of what our natures really are. What motivates us, what our actions truly. We love to live in our own little heads and think, oh, I'm so special and I'm such a good person. But whenever you look at human beings as a group, we do some very animalistic things, Right. And I could see. Now I don't know why in the hell anybody would want to what they're learning from us. I don't know. Or hey, let's test out this new, see how it reacts on humans. Who knows what it is? Or it may just be this. You've heard the theory where, like, I don't know if you believe that they come from another dimension or another planet, or they just might be a more higher evolved species of Earthlings.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, in my book, I start off with, let's think about the human species, or any species on this planet is geared towards their wants and needs. We can literally only see less than 1% of the light spectrum that's actually on this planet. We can only see less than 1%. How bad is that? I mean, like, if the doctor said you're only going to be able to see less than 1%, you'd be like, oh my God, you are blind. And so I tell people, I'm like, we're earthworms, because right now I'm in my house, but under my house are worms, and worms don't know about Doritos. Worms don't know about airplanes.
Unfortunately.
So, yeah. And it's like, I always try to do different patterns in nature, and how can they be equivalent, just like the whole cow theory a minute ago. So could we not be as benighted as worms as to what's going on this planet, especially because we've got these blinders on? We see less than 1%, so somebody might see something out of the side of their eye. What are they seeing? And this whole everything is all based on frequency. It's all frequency. So could, there was that ghost movie with, oh God, Tom Cruise's Australian wife. I can't think of her name. Nicole Kidman.
Okay.
And she was like in this old timey house, and she kept shutting the windows and the doors, and somebody kept opening them.
The others,
yeah. She found out she was the ghost.
Yeah.
She thought she was real. But I mean, like, let's just give it up, people, for a minute, that we're not all that intelligent, and other things could be going on. Because even my mom did say, hey, Dana, whatever we can dream or think, God can think way more. And speaking of God, that's another thing as I was a kid, because I would go to church and I'd go in and they would do the Nicene Creed, and they're like, I believe in all things visible and invisible. Do you know how much that pissed me off every Sunday? It freaking pissed me off, because every adult that I talk to, I'm like, okay, let's talk about ghosts then, because I'm serious. I'm 4 years old with a cookie, and I'm constructing, or conducting interviews, and everybody's like, no. And then I'm like, oh my God, you guys. And then I'm like, the Holy Ghost?
Well,
like, and they couldn't even give that one a tip of the hat. Whatever.
Well, it definitely sounds like you were definitely an advanced 4-year-old, and and which brings another great question from Live Light. She wants to know, when did Dana start regarding this aspect of her life as a gift, something special, and nothing to fear?
Next week. No, because it made me an outsider. I wanted to be normal. And I think, again, with people who've, had bad experiences in their life, whatever, it's something you want to wake up from. I just want to be like everybody else. Now, the gifts, I have gifts. And I actually, there were many times that the grace would come. I wouldn't even remember it. But I would have my body. I was able to do things after they were around. I could work with electricity and do certain things. And so I would kind of know. I'd be like, oh, they must have came last night, because look, I can do this and I can do that.
What do you mean work with electricity? What are you talking about?
Like I could zap things, or,
Really?
Well, yeah, I could do a lot of weird things. And now I'm going to tell you, digital clocks they were just like, they weren't even invented when this all kind of started. But so, like, old, I would go into like what we would call today a bodega or something, like just a little corner store. And I could play with the thermostat inside like the freezer thing or something like that. I could play with instrument panels and stuff like that. I could make things move.
Like with your mind, or would you touch?
Yeah, just kind of by, telepathically or whatever, just through my wishes. Basically, I don't know how else to describe it, but I would like to say that that's kind of how I feel, that with a spaceship, I think that they use telepathy. They're not exactly strong. I think it's more of a mind a mind input, like we've got Elon Musk right now, starting to get into all of that. And I think that's kind of how they use
like the Neuralink.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I had a lot of those things. I do feel that I have a very high extension of far infrared, because I can turn on and off street lamps, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's just a lot of weird things. So, and then I became a Reiki Master Teacher later on. But here's the deal. I never hung out my shingle because it scared me, the things that I could do. And I didn't know how people would take it. Because if I did this healing or something, I'm outing myself and then you're going to know. So I would pray for people or ask them if I could pray for them or help them just kind of privately, because it's too much for me, even, a lot of it's because how do you say this to people? So that's why I'm kind of a nervous wreck coming out of the cosmic closet and exposing myself. But thank God, I'm like, hey, we got Netflix. There's weirder things out there. I'm kind of like,
Well, there's a lot more weirder things out there. Trust me. I don't think this is so much weird as, there's a lot more very weird stuff out there.
Well, you just wait. We got more talking to do. Okay.
Well, here's the cool thing is one thing I like to throw around. I like to, here on Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, we keep the paranormal normal.
Yes.
And there's a lot of unnormal out in the world that ain't got nothing to do with this. So
right.
I think, like I said, this is a good place to be. And
right.
Don't ever be afraid to come out of the cosmic closet. I tell people all the time, like I was on a podcast last night and I got asked about my beliefs. And, like I tell you, as a professional magician, magicians normally don't believe in anything because they know the secrets to everything. And yes, I can fool you. I can deceive you and fake it. But I also know I've had my own experiences.
Right.
And a lot of times when I see footage, yes, I'm a skeptic at first. And I think, well, how would Danny Whitson do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then I come up and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Sometimes I see things and I'm like, yeah, that's complete garbage. Somebody's wanting likes and views because of the world we live in today.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's times I see stuff and I'm like, no, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Right.
So,
right.
And it's just the world we live in, there's going to be, the mix of both. And I think but you can be a very rational person and still believe and all this based on your experiences. Like what you said. Now, there's not a soul in the world that hadn't had to change, at least I know I've tried to change the channel without the remote before. I'm like, I don't want to get up and I can't find the Roku remote,
Right.
But I've heard other people though who have, abductees or contactees, and then afterwards they have some type of telekinesis or something.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So is that something that's usually, now you said like you feel these things, you're like, they must have visited me last night.
Yep.
So you don't always remember every time they visit you.
No, but I knew I would be changed and I would have these special abilities or something like that. So then and I'm sorry, but I mean, I had an older sister. She was 7 years older than me, and she'd sit on me and tickle my feet and stuff like that, so like, that's the only thing I had over her. So that was my only thing to be special. she would know,
Big sis is tickling my feet again. Uh-oh.
I hated it.
The room.
I know. So, I mean, so then I was special for a minute, and she'd always be like, oh, you can do that because that's just static electricity. And I, with my shoes, I'm like, it's not static electricity. And she had to admit over time, that it wasn't static electricity. And I do have to say one other thing, because yes, the supernatural has showed up as well. And I'm talking ghosts and angels and other things. And I don't know if it's because of the aliens, like why are all these things and beings, seeking me out? I don't know.
Do you know that's so wild is like, I never, before you are in this world, before you're in the paranormal world, mm-hmm. you like to separate your beans from your bacon and you don't like to mix the toast and the eggs. But, Ryan Stacy, he is, he's the founder of Tessa, and I had him on my podcast a few years back. And, Ryan showed up talking about all this stuff being connected. And I was kind of like, gross. I don't know if I like that, Mr. Ryan.
Right.
But
Right.
the more I have done research on my own, the more that I've been, in this, I'm beginning to think the same thing. I think they're all connected somehow. I don't claim to have answers. I don't claim to I don't know. I just know
I don't know either.
that something is something in another realm, another spiritual, whatever you want to call it, world exists, and they're all. And as crazy as it sounds like a fairy book story, but it's so weird.
But see, the way I look at it, I come from the perspective of this whole world is culture, whatever, is being gaslit. Because, okay, let's go back to the whole church thing. When I was able to read then, I mean, there was no Barnes and Noble. There was no bookstores, okay? I mean, there was no internet. The elementary school had a little, library and all that kind of stuff. So the only real book that might be of interest back in the day for me was the Bible. But I loved it because they are actually talking about aliens, For me, that's how I read it.
Well,
I mean, they say that. Well,
absolutely.
The wheel in the sky, all this kind of stuff. They talk about the Anunnaki and everything. And then, now I'm looking around at museums and art, and I'm like, well, there you go. There you go. There you have it. So for me, aliens live here. And I mean, we can get into that. They are here. They are running the planet, but it's the scrub, what I call the scrub, like the grays that are on and off world and stuff like that. But you're right. Are they interdimensional? Are they taking, are they using different spacecraft? But for me, if they're using spacecraft, they're folding time and space. Nobody's sitting in a tin can for 32 freaking years. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
That's just not how that works. I think Hollywood is disclosure. So if you look at Dune, you look at Star Trek, just look at all these things. They're disclosing it to us, and they're grooming us. They're grooming us. And,
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of like, yay. But I mean, I'm like, y'all been gaslit.
I don't want to, here's the thing. I don't want to go down this road. But I do have to mention this because you bring this up. Me and you think a lot of the same ways. Really, we do. Earlier when I've always, this has always kind of been my theory on a lot of things is when you look at human beings, we have eyes because light exists. We have ears because sound exists. And, we have taste, touch. We've evolved to have these senses to be able to, these senses are our tools that we can measure our environment for our own survival. Okay. Now there's other tools that we do not possess. We do not have that we can never measure.
Right.
So we don't know, just like how you were talking earlier, how it may be there. We just don't know. A worm doesn't know about Doritos because it has no way of knowing. It has no measurement, no way to measure its environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you there. And then I want to say this too, real quick, when you talk about Hollywood too. Okay. Now I'm not, and if you are, no offense. I think my brother is. My brother's one of these. He goes way out there in the Hollywood conspiracy thing. Too far for me. But I will say this. It is very coincidental. You can go back and watch Hollywood films that came out about 10 years ago that it was almost like it was warning us for 2020. And I'm not even going to tell you Contagion was one movie. If you ever get out and see Contagion, weird.
Yeah.
You can look at a few other movies. You're just like, man, that was really odd that they would, and you look back, were they trying to tell us something? Now, I don't know, but that's just a thought. And it's, like I said, this is beyond the tinfoil hat. So we're going to go beyond the tinfoil hat here, but it's interesting. It is very interesting. So I kind of agree with you on stuff like, like what was the most famous, one of the most famous UFO movies of all time, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, yeah.
It's there's so much of that it just makes you wonder because Hollywood has such a major impact on especially American culture, but the world.
Right. Right. And that I was watching Close Encounters at the end of writing my book, because I gave the last year, I said to Spirit, I'm like, okay, I give you 1 year to put whatever you want in it, show me what you want. And that's just the wheels on the bus fell off. It just got crazy. And I'd seen Close Encounters 20 million times, just like Harry Potter, whatever. And then it wasn't until I was writing my book, it's the end, this was October or November, and I went to publish in like April. So just very close to the end, I'm watching Close Encounters, and all of a sudden I'm like, shit, because the end scene where the bay door opens up, and because I have a lot of experience on being on ships, that's a whole nother thing. And I'll come, first the civilians, and the government welcomes them. There's military, civilians, and all this kind of stuff. And then out while these little babies. And I was like, oh my God, they're hybrids. And then out comes the tall stick guy. And so I encountered the tall stick guy. He was one of my encounters and everything. And he took DNA from me. And I'm like, oh my God, those little baby hybrids. So it was upsetting because I'm like, what did they do with my DNA? Are they cloning it? Are they this thing? Are they that? Are they eating them? I don't know. Or are they superheroes, super troopers out there somewhere in space? I don't know. But this tall stick guy, if you think about it now, there's all these clues. Like look at Jack Skeleton. What's the movie? Nightmare Before Christmas. There's like Mrs. Peregrine's Children or something. You're going to see these tall, skinny guys, different forms of the same character in different places. And so start watching for all these clues. I'm just using this as an example, but you're going to see the same patterns coming up in Hollywood over and over again. And in my book, I do write about the CIA and them disclosing that they do give this stuff to Hollywood, and quotes from top CIA agent guys. I don't know. I mean, it's in my book.
Something else also to consider, Dana, is how many of some of these writers may be expressing their own experiences.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Through,
100%.
Through some of this too. But also I think there is, it's just hard coincidental to knock that if we just go back a few years and we're like, wait a minute, this was almost like it was predicting the future or giving us a warning of what's going to happen, and we don't really realize it. And or is there something else throwing it out in the zeitgeist?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what if like you've heard of people use the term manifest it. So say it, put it out in the universe, and enough of it, it'll begin to happen. I don't know. Either way, I think that's a very interesting topic. Would definitely, we need to explore more of that idea.
And well, I need to pause you right here because this is hugely important, kind of like one of the takeaways in my book, because we're going to go back into frequency for a minute. I hope we can talk about, we're going to frequency, and telepathy, thought forms. My feeling is that what I call the powers that be are unable to manifest the same way as organic humans do.
Gotcha.
And that they can, they're manipulating through, programming on television, the broadcast.
I'll tell you what, Dana, let's do this. I tell you what, because we got to get to a commercial break here. But when we come back, I want you to just bookmark where you're at right now. We're going to pick up where we're at there. Then I want to get in and talk about these other beings that you're talking about. And then also I want to talk a little bit more about your book, okay? But I tell you what, guys, just hold on. We're going to get to this commercial break to sponsors. We'll be right back here with Dana Louise.
Thank you.
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today.
Business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
All right, we are back here at Beyond the Tinfoil Hat with author and UFO experiencer Dana Louise. Dana, let's pick up where we left off here. You were talking about, what was it?
Well, frequency and thought
frequencies.
Forms.
Yes.
Yeah, because this is so important. Just a little bit to get people thinking about this idea. If you believe in the power of prayer or, good vibes. I don't know how you want to express it, but if you can believe that we can put energy out there. I mean, I teach people how to do energy balls, this, that, or the other thing.
Okay.
So I'm just speaking about thought forms and that we have this television and there's programming that's broadcast out there with certain ideas. But to me, what I'm seeing is this separation and a lot of hatred and a lot of fear. And what's happening now is they're messing with the timelines. And I think some of you who are sensitive can feel these timelines and you're feeling big downloads. You're feeling some good input coming in, but you're feeling these shifts in the frequency and there's, all the Mandela effects and everything like that. So they're playing with it. We're being manipulated. We need to control our thoughts, what we're thinking, because this is the point, the critical point of what timeline are we going to be experiencing or what timeline you're going to be experiencing. In that, for me, I want it to be green with grass, happy children, good food,
I want the
good
one where I win
things.
the lottery.
Okay, there you go. I like that one.
I want that timeline.
There you go. But I mean, I think they're trying to manipulate it for fear, because for me, they feed off of fear, and you can think of that however you want to think of it, but it's manipulation. And so we have to be very, very aware of this. And, because a lot of times when we are watching TV, our brains are, more open in our subconscious. So we're more open.
Absolutely.
Back in my day, they used to have like the raising of the flag and stuff like that when the TV went on and off, and there was subliminal messages in there. I mean, nobody talks about subliminal messages in programming anymore, but what do you think? It went away? So we're susceptible when we're sitting there watching TV and eating our Doritos. Our brains are open and we're susceptible to thinking. And there's a huge thing that I talk about of creating Manchurian candidates and creating people to think certain ways because they're being trained and manipulated because they're in a hypnagogic state. And so we're open to this manipulation. So we really need to be critical and thinking, and think happy thoughts. Think happy thoughts, but it's important because timelines are shifting. This is it is important, and the frequency that we're choosing.
It's kind of strange. First of all, we're manipulated constantly, and I think it's gotten to the fact to where it's so blatant. I don't think they're as good at it as they used to be. If you want to, it's so blatantly not that they're more successful than they've ever been with it, but I think it's so blatantly obvious.
And when you can see it, you're a magician. You're very aware of all that.
I've always seen stuff, like we look at our phones on TikTok, on all these other apps, and there's things that we just, okay, I'm going to think like this now, or I'm going to do this now.
Right.
You talk about like the Mandela effect. I honestly, and we mentioned this before the break, about how Hollywood's almost trying to warn us. Have you ever seen the comedy Idiocracy? Okay.
I don't know.
I'm going to highly recommend, Dana, homework, go watch Idiocracy. And next time we have you on, we're going to talk about it. Idiocracy.
Who's in it?
It's a documentary of now. Okay. So it's a comedy.
We're in it. Yeah. Okay.
you watch it and you're like, that is so ridiculous. And then you start thinking, holy hell, that is now.
I know.
But no, it's a very good comedy, but it's one of those things you're like, that is so coincidental because that is actually happening now. Yeah. But I totally believe you. Now this isn't a question that's popped up, but this is a question right over here I see from Christy Ann. I refer to many people, we see the same things and put it into the media as collective unconsciousness. Absolutely. And also we got a question from D that's just popped up on the screen. Any abductees here? Well, I do believe Dana. Yes, Dana. She's had straight contact with other beings. Well, let's do this. This is a good way to move into. What are the other beings besides the grave?
Okay, so and these guys I had no clue of. And in fact, there was this girl, I think her name is Michelle Walling or something like that. I found her on Facebook. She used to live in the Twin Cities. And I was noodling around on her Facebook page and and I'm like, oh crap, look at these guys. And she immediately had me on her show and it immediately blew up and everybody's like, blah, 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 because I've never seen this particular creature. So, okay, here's the story. My husband and I, we got kids and we make a couple of daiquiris and we have a pull-out couch in the basement. We have our TV and a fireplace, and that's kind of like our little getaway, right? And so, that is the, date night thing on the weekend. And we're down there and we're sleeping. And my husband, he's a muggle. I hope you all know what that term means. And he, if I move or anything like that, he's like, so he's a light sleeper. But all of a sudden I realized that my head is hurting. I wake up and I open my eyes and I know I'm upside down. So how can I describe this? It's like, okay. So it's like, here's the bed and my husband, our heads are supposed to be here, but my head is hanging off the edge of the bed down here. Okay. And I'm frozen, but this has happened to me many, many years. So I know how to fight that frozen, whatever you call it. Anyway, so But I open my eyes, I'm upside down, and here are these little creatures walking in, or they're trudging, and they're probably this tall. I hope you can see that. They're about that tall. And they look square, and they have like flap feet, kind of like E.T., and flappy arms, but a stump, more like a tree stump, and just their teeth are sharp, and they have a mottled effect around their face, and their heads are square, these little flappy arms, and they're trudging in, just a bunch of them silently trudging in. Okay. And one of them pulls to the side and says to me, "Are we scaring you? Are we frightening you?" And I said, "Yes." And they all shapeshifted to be a softer look. And I was like, still like pissed off, like, I don't care. And then she knows this, or she can tell. And she goes, "We're here to save your planet," which to me was huge, because we're here to save your planet. So that said to me, she's not living in a different dimension. They're not from here. And I don't know if they had a spaceship or anything. They could have come through a vortex, but they're off world. We're here to save your planet. And then I'm like, because me, it like, all, I'm not happy. And then, and I'm trying to fight and move now. And I'm looking at my husband. Thank you. He's asleep, whatever, now that I need you. Right. And I'm trying to get my head up on the bed, and I'm looking, and my right is this light, and it's about this big, but it's like one of those dental lamps, or what you would see in a surgical unit, but it's more like the dental one, because it had that real iridescence, like, the real pretty one. Anyway, so I see this lamp, it's very bright light, and out from underneath it comes this I just got the chills, skinny guy, like his arms are probably this skinny, but long, gangly.
This is the same experience that
this is
the
same thing. The other beings are trudging in. They're trudging in. I'm on the bed. I'm trying to move. I look at my feet. There's a lamp, and this creature's coming out from underneath the lamp, and it's smiling at me, and it's coming on top of me, and it's male, I think, but it's hilariously, it's wearing black Speedos. Okay. And its hips are probably about this big, it's wearing black Speedos. I've never seen an alien wearing clothing before, whatever. Anyway, but it's smiling at me, and I knew who it was immediately, because I used to draw a picture probably in about 2nd and 3rd grade. So probably about the time the Grays were done with me, because I think they only really encounter kids, when they're younger. And they did take me in the middle of the day. That's another thing in my book. They tagged me in the woods one day. That's a whole nother story. But anyway,
well, here, Dana, let me do this real quick, okay?
Yeah.
Because there was another question from Lisa Light that we weren't able to get to, but you pretty much did. You pretty much answered a lot of her question. Okay. But Liv Light, she says, "Dana, you've had many interdimensional beings experiences. Is there an overall message for humanity? Do you have hope for humans? Any suggestions on how to raise our vibrations and frequencies?" If you could cover any of that, and then I want to get right back into where you were at there.
Sure. Well, the vibrations and frequencies is, again, our thought forms. I mean, doing all those things to, skip, for God's sake, have fun, bring joy. Those are the things that raise the vibration. Acts of kindness. Those are profound ways, and they are like a shockwave out into the universe, these acts of kindness. That is the best way. I mean, of course, we can all do this and that, and you can clean your chakras. And hey, if you knew, there's only 3 of them really, and all this kind of stuff for humanity. Okay, so people want disclosure. I'm kind of doing the whole humanity thing. Aliens are already in control, so there's really not any